And our second presentation today is How Many Spreadsheets Does It Take to Communicate Textbook Affordability by Shannon Pritting and Sarah Morehouse from Empire State University. Shannon Pritting is currently the Director of Library Services, Open and Digital Learning Assets. In this role, he oversees traditional library services and coordinates affordability and open learning efforts at SUNY Empire State University. He is a four-time SUNY alum who has worked in many different roles within SUNY and Syracuse University. Sarah Morehouse is the Librarian Coordinator of Instructional Support at SUNY Empire. She works with the faculty and instructional designers to support course revision and development, as well as supporting textbook affordability initiatives through OER and strategic ebook acquisition. She's done a little of everything over the years, but it all ends up tying into access and equity. Okay, Shannon and Sarah, thank you for being here today, and I'm going to stop my share and you can take it away.
Great. I'm going to turn my video off and then share my screen. And just making sure everyone can see my PowerPoint. And all right. Okay. All right. So we're good. So we have a lot to get to. So I'll just talk briefly about Empire State University if you don't know who we are. Almost completely online. So we're SUNY's leading online institution. Access-based, a lot of returning students, adult students, but certainly growing because we're online in younger students. So we serve a lot of veterans. We're also an autism-friendly institution as well. And really, at our core is access. So, affordability is something that, all levels of the institution are committed to. So I just wanted to do a little bit of background about where we were before this initiative with resource affordability. So we had data about OER usage, absolutely. And then the institutional culture was really about authoring and not as much adopting, but mostly adapting single objects that are OER, not really looking to move many things into a complete replacement of textbooks. So we didn't have a lot of aggregated institution-wide data about affordability at the course level. Certainly that data was available. We had access to it, but it wasn't like we were looking at it and operationalizing it. And we didn't have data about course resources. We didn't know what was being used in courses from our collections, didn't have a connection with the bookstore. So I'm going to talk about how that has changed over the course of the presentation, but first I'm going to talk about data sources. So one of our biggest problems with all of the data is matching it up, because very little of it actually has the same types of identifiers, even though it's all describing similar or very connected data points. So I'm going to go through each one of them. So we get bookstore data regularly. So I think they send it maybe 15 times a semester, because we're trying to iterate and get ahead of course adoptions as much as possible. That bookstore data has course, instructor, the date that the instructor submitted it. It has a tag if they're using OER. If they say they're not using text, that has a tag as well. And then pricing, and then other book metadata like ISBN, cost, author, things like that. And then we also, Empire is extremely open with data, and there are dashboards, Power BI dashboards that all of us have access to, and we can request custom Power BI dashboards from banner data, from any sort of data source. It's not only restricted to administration or specific groups. We have extraordinarily good access to data. So we have Power BI dashboards where we have course information, like which ones are OER, enrollments, and then we can also match that with things like completion rates, disparities with different socioeconomic and racial groups. All of that can be connected together, and we have those dashboards. So we have this data that's easily accessible, we can look back to see what's being tagged as OER. Our OER tags are coming from a system called Course Leaf, where if the entire course is tagged as OER, that comes through. And I think we've been a little inconsistent with tagging OER if it is not coming from Course Leaf, and it's what we call a mixed section, where some sections are using OER, some not. And then we also get spreadsheets that we match against eBook Central, and we've tried to do it in Rialto some. We're relying on this less and less due to the reliability of that. And then we merge all of these spreadsheets into Airtable, an Airtable base, and then we create views so we can operationalize this and work on the data as it's coming in, append data to to these bases, and in essence create tasks lists and review lists and analysis lists from this. And then now that we've moved to using Alma course reserves, we also have the Alma analytics so that we can have another merged data source. So there's a lot of pieces that we're looking at. The one that's been most useful in our first two iterations that we'll talk about later, we weren't able to go course by course as much. We really looked at textbooks and how could we just buy textbooks and not necessarily always associate it to the course until after the fact, and that was challenging. We knew we needed to go course by course, and we needed to append data 15 times a semester or more, and then do things with that data. So Airtable has been great with this. We have an institutional license for Airtable. So this is one of the views in Airtable that we're looking at, where we're doing availability reviews. We're putting in library text so that we can put that data into Alma course reserves. We know who the instructor is, so that if we need to reach out to them about any sort of question, we have that readily available. And this also allowed us to move from a single person responsible for this to multiple people working on different parts of it so that we could improve the process. And really our focus is dual use of the data, both operationalizing and then analysis after the fact, trying to build in the data points so that we don't have to input data or do additional analysis. And Airtable has been great in that we can do course by course by course and then associate other data into it, because ultimately you want to look at the course and what you're affecting. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Sarah, who's going to talk a little bit about our OER usage.
Thanks, Shannon. We had been involved formally in OER as an institution since the first wave of SUNY funding in 2017. And like Shannon said, much of it was directed towards OER creation and also adopting and adapting small single-serving OERs, like 8-minute video kinds of things. But we had hit a plateau, and our affordability results were not increasing. In fact, there was a slight decline in OER course enrollments in 2022 and 2023, as a few of the OER courses that hadn't worked out were revised and weren't OER anymore. So SUNY Empire's uptake of OER ready to adopt courses has been modest. We have a lot of potential for growth in our level 1000 courses that have huge enrollments. The textbooks are typically very expensive intro to XYZ textbooks. But what we're stuck on is the issue of extra unfunded time that our faculty developers need to switch to ready to adopt courses. They're called ready to adopt, but they often need some modification, and also the course itself needs adjusting. I don't want to undersell our OER successes here. 9.1% of our courses are OER. 7% of our enrollments are in OER courses. By the national average textbook cost, we've saved our students $2.13 million. By our bookstore's average, it's $1.77 million, but you can't fault us for having a cheaper bookstore. So that's not nothing. But we found only incremental growth was possible with OER. When Shannon was hired last year, he decided what we were going to do was something a bit more transformative. So we were going to do OER and then some. So first, Shannon talked to our administration, and they agreed on a goal of 20% of course sections having no or reduced textbook costs. This was congruent with our new strategic plan, which we called Elevate 28. By aligning it to specific strategic plan tactics, Shannon got us a 25% overall budget increase and eventually additional money for textbooks, $25,000, and more lines of staff. We have adjunct librarians helping out with reference to free the rest of us up to do more project work. We're looking for a staff member, and we are in the process of hiring an OER and scholarly communications librarian. This is like radical for us. So what we started with was letting faculty know that there are free to students alternatives to textbooks that will potentially improve outcomes, because faculty are aware that students who can't afford their textbooks struggle and usually just stop. And even if we couldn't find an OER for them, we still had options. Meanwhile, Shannon got to work on how to make it happen. So in summer 2023, we purchased textbooks that we found in the bookstore data from the vendor that we already had, which is eBook Central. And we let faculty know by sending out spreadsheets of the course's texts and permalinks. That worked a little. It got the news out, but it was complicated and it was onerous for everybody.
Sorry for continuing to advance quickly, Sarah. I'll go back. Go ahead.
We're slide 17. I think we're synced up.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, there was obvious room for improvement. Working in all these disconnected systems was time-consuming and a bit frustrating, but our return on investment made it worth it to dig deeper. We had gotten pretty far with the limits on purchases, like only buying unlimited licenses and only books that cost $250 or less. By fall, we raised that threshold to $450, allowed more limited licenses, and had gotten course reserves collection into our discovery system so that we could move away from the dreaded spreadsheet attachments. And when I say return on investment, at one benchmark, we had spent $25,000 on textbooks and saved our students $664,000.
So Sarah, we're on slide 11. So I just wanted.
Oh, we are.
So yeah.
Oh, I've jumped ahead.
Yeah, I'm gonna move us forward. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Yep. I'm gonna talk a little bit about what we did to make it work with the bookstore. So one of the first things that we did is we knew we had to forge a connection with the bookstore. We have Barnes and Noble. We had to get buy-in. We know they had the data that we needed. We knew we needed it in a usable format. We had to work with them over the course of a couple of months with getting Excel files where we could get course data, ISBNs, everything that we could pull into other systems. And this took some iterations. And then also we knew that, it was essential for us to get a lot of data back as well, because we wanted to see if this was feasible long term and, how much things were changing. So, talked to the vice president who was in charge of the bookstore operations managers, talking to a lot of different people. And then the essential thing is just trying to build that relationship. So we're not coming in to say, like, we're here to criticize the bookstore for being too expensive, etc. So I try to, keep asking them, what can we do that's of value to you? So they often needed a lot of assistance with licensing. We started doing streaming video that helped them out, that they didn't have to do that. We helped them with copyright review. And then one of the things that I think benefited them the most is we reduced course packs of convenience by buying ebooks or other content so that faculty weren't just conveniently saying, do this course pack again. And then often we would help them in ways where they couldn't navigate through a process to make faculty change what they're teaching. And I put the VHS tape up because that was one of the successes, is that, so this one course was using really old videos that they couldn't source. It was a constant problem. I helped work with a couple of different departments to get this course revised to use things that they could actually purchase. So there are areas that you can partner with a bookstore, even if you're working to replace the textbook. One of the great things that they did is they gave us 3 years of data about the adoption so that we could see how much textbooks were changing semester to semester and to see how much we could affect textbook affordability. going forward as well, because, if we saw that we could only, if, we were using mostly Cengage material, then we needed to have different, expectations of how much we could replace. But it was great that they gave us so much data, because we saw there was a lot of repeat usage. We saw there were a lot of things that we could do to, replace textbooks, especially at higher level courses. All right, Sarah, I'm going to turn it back over to you
Okay,
for the alpha
now
phase.
we're back to me. Sorry about
Yep.
that. So yes, in 2023, we were purchasing the textbooks that we found from the bookstore data from the vendor, eBook Central, and letting faculty know with a spreadsheet, which we sent out in an email attachment. And we didn't have the means to let individual faculty know which textbooks were for their particular courses without having them search the spreadsheet. It was suboptimal. So working in these disconnected systems was taxing. It was not working as well as we would have liked. And we decided to make some improvements, starting with raising the threshold of purchasing to $450 per title, and experimenting with allowing non-unlimited licenses, like 1 and 3 seat licenses, which we had always thought could not possibly be used for textbooks because there would be turnaway alerts. But what we did was we bought 3 seats. Well, we started by buying 1 seat. We eventually moved up to 3 seats, turned off downloading so that students couldn't lock each other out when they weren't actually reading, and we stopped having any turnaway alert problems, which means that nobody was getting locked out of the ebook that they needed to read for their course. So we also got a course reserve system. Well, not a course reserve system. We got a course reserves collection in our discovery system, which is Primovi, so that we could move away from those dreaded spreadsheet attachments. Instead, we could say, hey, your course textbook is available. Here's where you can search for it. Also, it would just appear in search results if you were looking for ebooks or anything on a particular subject and that textbook came up. There's a little purple flag that says it's a textbook for a course, and that might guide a student towards it.
All right, Sarah, we're just gonna speed up because we're
okay. Sorry about
almost
that.
out of time. Go ahead. Second iteration.
In the fall, Shannon involved me and Heather Shaloub to make it a team-based approach, and just identifying and searching the textbooks was time-consuming because there were wrong edition ISBNs, there were titles that were slightly off, but we figured things out. We were able to learn from our experience, get more systematic, but discovery was key. If students can't find it, if faculty can't find it, it basically doesn't exist. The course reserves collection in Primovi was great, but our users were still sometimes struggling, so Heather and Shannon made a LibGuide that was searchable by course number, name, instructor, or title. Since we were simultaneously working to get the librarians involved in course revision processes, which is something that I'm involved in, we also began to ask faculty to put a note in their syllabus, ideally with the permalink. Slide 21.
Yep, we're not there yet. So can you see the slide, Sarah?
Yes.
Okay.
They're very small though.
Okay.
So, yeah,
so we're now on slide 21. Is that where you want to be? All right, go ahead.
Thank you. We also have a book note in the bookstore when a student goes to buy their textbook. There is a note that says this textbook is also freely available to you in the library. It's very nice of the bookstore to cooperate with us on that, but that is one of the ways that we drive students to use the library textbook as opposed to purchasing. If they want to, they're always going to have the option to purchase if they like print. We also worked with the registrar to put a no textbook attribute in banner so that students could search for courses with no textbook costs. And we asked our mentors, which is what we call advisors, to show that to students. And Shannon will show you our results.
All right. And I'm gonna bring it home here, Sarah, because we've only got about 3 minutes. We're running late. All right. So I'm just going to talk about the results. And then, ultimately I wanted to get to a stage where we could reliably say, this is how affordable we are. First iteration, fall 2023, 31% of our courses were affordable. So that isn't necessarily ZTC, even though we were calling them ZTC at that point. $936,000 of savings. We affected 585 sections. And then we refined our process to focus more and more on course sections and less on textbooks. And then we also, after the first semester, trying to see how affordable we could get, knew that we had to do a better job of looking at which course sections we would count, because Empire is innovative and flexible in very interesting ways. So we have a type of course called ed planning, which is advising students on their career and educational goals. We took that out, even though that took out 500 sections of OER. Most of them were 1 or 0 enrollments. And then we also do a lot of just-in-time or individual studies. We took those out because they often weren't even reporting their course resources. So we ended up with less course sections, but we didn't just cherry pick things that we said, well, those are going to be tough. And we knew we had to take out special arrangements where we have a teach out agreement with an institution that is closing, and we took those out because that was from an inclusive access school. So a lot of things that we did to make sure that we could repeat our analysis of how affordable we were. So just looking at the easy ones, which are the general savings from ebooks, we have saved 1.67 million in the last 3 semesters, and we keep going up. Summer, we were very limited, only 48. Spring 2024, 586 ebooks we licensed. And then what this cost us, $85,000 we invested in ebook purchasing. We knew we would have startup costs. That's still almost a 20 times ROI, which is often better than what you would get with investments in OER as well. So, we think this is a good use of our funds as well. So we don't think that costs will escalate. Empire Online is working with us to revise courses, and we will continue to grow, but not in a way that's not sustainable. In the middle of this, we also implemented Rialto, which has been fantastic for us to save money and make it easier. This semester, we purchased 77 titles. They're usually about 30% less for a DRM free versus buying a UA from a reseller like eBook Central or EBSCO. And this has been fantastic because the students get a better experience where they can download the entire book. And then it also has allowed us to buy more that we wouldn't be able to get just through eBook Central. And then Sarah talked a little bit about our seat situation. We are going wholeheartedly into buying as many seats as we need, as long as we can afford to do that. And looking at kind of the distribution of majors to see if we're doing one more than another. History, surprisingly, was one where we could buy textbooks pretty easily. Nursing even has helped us out. And then there's just a broad array of other majors, there's not a major cluster of like half. And then we found that we're affecting the 3,000 or 300 level with, other grad courses, and 400 level we're affecting with the ebook purchasing. And then as Sarah was doing the analysis, there's a wide variance in usage of these ebooks to see whether the students are actually taking us up on the offer of free. So we only looked at eBook Central. Some of them have only 1, and others have 7,500 or 7,600 as well. So we need to do more analysis of the usage of the ebooks, but it's mixed, and we know we need to do things to expose information to students about that these are available. So this semester, where we leaned into it and said, how affordable can we make ourselves by broadening our approach? 35% of all of our sections are free of textbook costs. So that means they're OER, or we have every single book that is assigned. 45% of our sections have reduced textbook costs. So that means we have at least 1 or more textbooks that we're replacing with ebooks, or it's OER, or it's every single textbook. So that's 596 course sections with those reduced costs out of 1,335 total sections offered. Over $1.1 million in student savings just for this semester. So based on this, and then I did some analysis of what was left over that we couldn't affect, and we definitely have 150 course sections where there's good OER that would be around 11%. We can easily get to 50% of our course sections are going to be affordable. And that's, I think, a compelling narrative to tell of half of our sections you will not have, course resource costs. So next steps, and this is it. I know I'm running over. We are now tightly embedded into a team-based course review process where we use decision support, academic support in the library, and then faculty and then our instructional designers work together to revise courses. And we are, proposing to them an array of textbooks that we can license for them if they're open to it. And we're having really good success that the faculty are taking us up on that, and we give them options between 2 or 3 textbooks we can license, and they'll pick one of them. Very rarely in our experience in this now are they saying, no, I'm going to stick with this textbook. They care about affordability, and especially if we give them options where it's not just OER we're presenting to them, we're having a lot better success. So that's it for us, and now we have time for a little bit of time for questions.
Thank you very much, Shannon and Sarah. A common word I'm seeing in the chat is inspirational, and I tend to agree. So we do have time for a question or two, and I will go quickly into those for you. First question is the regular bookstore data feed automated or dependent on people coordinating?
It would be nice to get it automated, but it just requires me sending an email, and they usually give it to me in the same day. So it requires then someone giving it to me. We did have access to the Barnes and Noble system where we could download it, and then we moved away from that because it was just blurring the lines too much. I think they would give it to us if we wanted, but again, they do a lot of things that we don't need to be involved in that process. Yep.
Thank you. Next question. Do you collect OER data each semester?
Yes. And I think we've gotten better at that. We picked up many sections just by looking course by course. At Empire, all the librarians have access to every single course in Brightspace. So we can go in and look what's there, and there's the expectation that we could reach out to faculty if we have questions. They don't look at it as an invasion of their privacy. So short answer, yes. Long answer is this is the semester we have been most reliable on that. We had to get a reassigned staff person to help us with that, and just admitting that even gathering OER data is a ton of work.
Great, thank you. I think we have time for one more question. Do you have recommendations for tutorials / learning resources for Airtable? I've played around in it some, but your presentation makes me think I should dig in and use it more.
Whatever's on the Airtable, like the Airtable documentation and training material is really great, and I use it all the time. So I would just go with what they have. It would be my recommendation.
Okay, thank you. And again, thank you for that presentation. It was really, really awe-inspiring, the really great work y'all have done. We have several more questions that we'll forward on to you, and then once we get those answers from you, we'll share them with all the registrants today, along with the recordings of today's conference.